For a long time, I have felt that there is this Marxist thread raging through America and that it is coming from the CCP. Is it just to disrupt life in America? I mean, what is the point of funding and what specifically is he paying for?
It's not just to disrupt. In fact, Neville Singham is an open, self-declared Maoist. He absolutely does not like what this country stands for. What they're attempting to do is, if they can sow enough discord here and back elected officials, especially that support these ideologies that would essentially put the United States as number 2 in the global order, it is my opinion and belief that he is working on behalf of the Chinese government to essentially break America. I'd say that he's probably number 1 big fish that we have in regards to who's responsible for a lot of the divide in this country, and it's going back all the way to the CCP. Singham he actually lives in China a majority of the year, did not respond to Congress's request to have him to come in, so we did ask Bassett to freeze assets. The Department of Justice has a very easy layup here. They could actually bring charges against him.
That's Florida Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna on this program with me back in September, sounding the alarm on the alleged financial crimes of technology tycoon Neville Roy Singham and his role in funding Marxist, socialist and communist groups here in America. Yesterday, the DOJ launched a grand jury probe into Singham following a letter sent by the House Oversight Committee. Joining me now is the chairman of the Oversight Committee, Kentucky Congressman James Comer, is here with me right now. Mr. Chairman, great to see you. Thank you so much for being here. And I know that we've talked about Roy Neville Singham before. What can you tell us about him?
Well, I would think that the purpose of what we believe he was trying to do in funneling money through all these nonprofits and other entities that were funding these leftist organizations is, number 1, disruption, as you mentioned before, but also disinformation. If you look at what's taking place today, especially in a lot of states like my home state of Kentucky, where there is a lot of interest in luring data centers to make an investment in various communities, there's this huge disinformation campaign that's being funded on all the Facebook accounts in all these rural towns about things that will never happen with respect to data centers. This is being funded, we believe, by pro-China organizations. We believe that a lot of the protests funded around the world, from around the United States, from Portland to Miami or wherever you've seen an influx of protests, these are being funded by pro-China groups. And when we start looking into where that money's coming from and you start following the money, Mr. Singham's name continues to pop up. He's used lots of shell companies to distribute this money. He's sometimes used accounts through Goldman Sachs and other big New York trading accounts. So we're trying to get to the bottom of this. I think the Department of Justice is spot on. Todd Blanche is doing an outstanding job as acting Attorney General. We're finally trying to see some accountability with respect to all the disruption and disinformation that's being funded by China.
So is the CCP paying him?
Well, the money's coming from somewhere. Obviously, he has a lot of business deals. He has a lot of, as I said, partners that he funnels money through, legitimate partners like Goldman Sachs, other LLCs that I don't think are anything more than shell companies used to launder money. But he is definitely a pro-CCP tech mogul who's is unhappy with America for whatever reason, even though he's made a lot of money in the United States, it appears, and he's doing everything he can to disrupt and disinform the average American citizen.
Wow, unbelievable. All right, we're going to be watching that case for sure and your oversight there. But I want to get your take on the other story we've been working on, and that is these new files released by former DNI Tulsi Gabbard. They show officials shielded Dr. Anthony Fauci from a Biden-era whistleblower complaint, alleging that he lied to Congress under oath about funding gain-of-function research in Wuhan. Kentucky Senator Rand Paul has been leading the charge. He joined me on Sunday with the evidence. Here's what he told me. Watch. What have you learned about Anthony Fauci's role in COVID-19?
What we now know beyond a reasonable doubt is that Anthony Fauci did indeed fund gain-of-function research. We have the evidence that the experiments were gaining in function. The viruses were becoming more lethal, more attachable to human cells, and more infectious. We do know that this was going on, that was funded by the NIH, specifically under the tutelage of Anthony Fauci. We know that the initial estimate by the scientists at the CIA was that this came from the lab. They agreed with our supposition. But Anthony Fauci was able to coerce, cajole, persuade, and dangle money to get people in the intelligence community to change their vote. So a scientific commission within the CIA voted 6-1 to say it came from the lab. He somehow was able to get that change. We have evidence of that happening. The virologists that he handpicked that were big recipients of federal dollars, all of them initially were saying it looks like it was manipulated. The virus looks manipulated. He was able to convince them otherwise. We now have evidence that in January of 2020, that he was already acknowledging that the virus did not come from the wet market, that the wet market was a spreader event, but wasn't an initial event because we had lineages of people way before the wet market that were getting sick. Everyone acknowledged that, but for years he's been telling us it came from animals at the wet market. This was all misdirection. This was a conspiracy. This was a cover-up.
And Congressman, you've questioned Fauci in hearings before. Senator Paul has subpoenaed him back to come back for more testimony. What do you make of that? And what about that pardon? Because you've also investigated the auto pen. And I would like to know if that pardon, I mean, by the way, it was so incredible that Joe Biden pardons Anthony Fauci literally hours before Donald Trump took the oath of office on inauguration day. I was shocked when I saw that headline on my phone while I was at the inauguration, and I'm watching the president is about to take the oath of office, and now we see that Fauci actually was pardoned. Why? Was it the auto pen? Is it legitimate? What do you want to say?
Well, first of all, he pardoned Fauci minutes before the transition of power from Joe Biden to Donald Trump. I do not think it's legitimate, and I don't think the basis of the illegitimacy is the auto pen. We deposed the entire circle of the Biden White House, the inner circle that was in charge of taking the pardon documents down to the auto pen and having those signed in Joe Biden's name. But what we found was no one communicated with Joe Biden directly. Joe Biden never authorized Dr. Fauci or any of the other pardons, Adam Schiff, Jamie Raskin, all of those people. He never authorized them. These were people in the Biden administration, sometimes even Jill Biden, unilaterally saying, okay, pardon this guy. There were no minutes of Joe Biden ever having a meeting to discuss with the Department of Justice, you know, your normal pardon process where the president who has sole pardon authority, not the first lady, not the chief of staff, the president of the United States. There was no record in the calendar where Joe Biden ever had any meetings. There were no people who testified under oath in their depositions that they had one-on-one, eyeball-to-eyeball contact with Joe Biden where he said, pardon these people. So the evidence that we gathered would suggest, in my opinion, that the pardon should be declared null and void, regardless of whether they were signed with an auto pen or not. Joe Biden wasn't involved in the pardon process, and the president's the only one that has absolute pardon authority. And with respect to what Rand Paul said, he's absolutely right. Dr. Fauci lied to Congress, and I'll add, Maria, Rand has issued criminal referrals from his Senate investigative committee, and I've issued criminal referrals from our House investigative committee, which was the COVID select subcommittee underneath the oversight committee led by Dr. Brad Winstrup. We know Dr. Fauci lied, and you think about the millions of lives that we lost because of COVID, the tens of millions of lives that were disrupted, a year of public education at least lost by kids in the United States, trillions of dollars mismanaged by Congress in reaction to COVID, and just the total disruption of the world economy. And he's still walking around just like an innocent guy who totally misled the world on the origins of COVID and how the proper response to COVID should have been.
So what should we follow to understand where this is going? Is that the DOJ who will decide whether or not the pardon was null and void? I mean, how will this play out?
I hope so. You know, you're talking about hundreds of pardons. You're talking about the entire Biden family, and you know how passionate I am about the fact that the evidence is there on the money that the Biden family took from China, and they've never been held accountable. And I think that pardon would be tossed in court, not just because Joe Biden, there's no evidence he talked about it. More than likely, he probably didn't talk about his family to somebody, but the fact that he pardoned them preemptively, which I don't even think is a legal thing.
Yeah.
So hopefully they'll see some accountability. Todd Blanche is doing a great job. He hasn't been on the job very long, but we're seeing a lot of accountability now and a lot of action out of the Department of Justice since Todd Blanche is leading it.
Well, Mr. Chairman, thank you for your work on this. We're going to be watching your moves as we continue to follow what's next for Anthony Fauci after this incredible story. Thank you, Congressman.